After the cat was let out of the bag about Rusty's affair, we see the ramifications affecting every aspect of his life, as he looks for help from his family, Detective Rodriguez, and his closest friend Raymond, but the question is, will they stand by his side? It is time for us to discuss and break down episode 2 titled People vs. Rosette Savage of Presumed Innocent. This episode picks up immediately after the events of episode 1 as Tommy asks Rusty if he knows who the father of Carolyn's unborn child is and if he's aware of any other relationship that she might have been in, as we see Rusty's response is no. You see Tommy asks Rusty if he's willing to take a paternity test, as we see Rusty doesn't answer, but he asks if he's a main suspect in his case, which Tommy responds by asking him how long has he been having an affair with Carolyn. As we ultimately see, Rusty leaves the room. As they argue about how the optics look about Raymond assigning him to take on the lead of this case, and Rusty responds by feeling that this case was thrown on him, we see Rusty leaves the room and tells Tommy to get a warrant, which we later see he does. Now I'm just curious to know, did Rusty not seriously think that this will come out? Now I'm sure that he was gonna hopefully think that he was gonna have more time to come up with a way of rolling out the affair and how he had a relationship with her, but something that I think this episode did a great job at doing, and this is one of the examples, is how it shows inconvenience of time within Rusty's life. In this episode, as we'll talk about, he had no moments to really sit down and think, and we see that play out so well in this episode. Now, we watch Rusty head to his car, and he wipes off all of his fingerprints. Now, was he doing this because the last time he was with her was the night that she died? But then again, why is he doing this right now? Wouldn't you think that if he was the killer, he would have immediately had wiped off his car after committing the murder? Again, timing is everything about this episode. We cut to seeing more intimate moments between the two, Carolyn and Rusty, as we see him going for a swim, which to me, the show has made it a point to show us him swimming. Now, this activity seems to be a moment where he gets to clear his head, but I'm very curious on why they keep showing us this particular activity, this particular location. We must have to assume that this will be key later on in this season. Back at Rusty's house, we see him telling Barbara about Carolyn's pregnancy and that he's now a main suspect. Now, Rusty also tells her the truth about the affair, in which she thought ended over a year ago, but it had started up again. He says that it only happened for about a week, which I do not believe him, as we see Barbara has no words. As we cut to seeing Raymond talking to his wife about this situation, and she's wondering if he knew about the affair the whole time, as she wants to tell Barbara that she had no idea. She brings up some interesting points about her position of being upset because Raymond neglected the fact that there might have been an affair going on under his nose, as she says that this is a reflection on him and it leads down to her and how she's being viewed. This to me was a perfect example of this domino effect of this murder, but also that affair and how it affects everyone in Rusty's life. Now, even though Tommy has taken over this case, we see Rusty still looks into the Bonnie Davis file and hopes to find similarities, and he finds one big cover-up that happened. Now, we cut between flashing back case and her withdrawing important information to that case as Rusty finds out that the DNA found on Buddy Davis' body contained 2 samples of DNA. Now, the medical doctor tells Rusty that they didn't disclose this because it was inconclusive, but someone knew about this and didn't tell the rest of the defensive team, and that someone was Carolyn. As we go back to a flashback of her learning this and keeping this to herself, meanwhile, Rusty and the doctor get into a little bit of a scuffle after the doctor jokingly says that the DNA might have been Rusty, as Rusty grabs him and yells that he was concealing evidence. Now, throughout this episode, we see Rusty attempting to get a hold of Detective Rodriguez, who seems to be ignoring him. Meanwhile, Tommy tells Nico what happened between Rusty and the doc, as Nico points out how great it would be to destroy Rusty, but Tommy should remove all his personal emotions and his hate towards Rusty and just get to the bottom of it and doing things the right way. Now, to me, this kind of erases what I mentioned in my last breakdown with Tommy and Nico maybe being involved in Carolyn's murder, because if you look at this conversation, this is basically Nico saying do the right thing, do right by the justice system, and do the right procedures and not lead by your emotions. So let me know if you all took this conversation as the same way as having them two being not a suspect in the murder of Carolyn. Now, back with Barbara, she goes into Rusty's room and she looks into Carolyn's files and she sees the photos of her murder. Now, tell me in the comments, is this the face of someone that is shocked or upset by what happened to her, or is this the face of someone that can't believe what they have done in killing someone? Now, Rusty makes it back home, and after seeing those photos, we see Barbara believes it's time for the kids to know what's happening, and clearly Rusty isn't prepared for this moment. But he's essentially forced to tell them about the affair, which he does. As this scene is happening, you can see the devastation on these kids' faces as they leave the table. As we see Barbara tells Rusty,
I will not be alone with this time.
We see her going to talk to the kids, and we hear them asking her, will she leave their dad? And she doesn't know right now, but she tells them that he's a good man and he loves her. Now, in the comments, I'm curious to have this conversation with you all, but do you all believe that Barbara did the right thing in having Rusty tell the kids what happened? Now, to answer my own question, I think she had every right to do that, because I think it is smart to say what she said, which is, do you rather the kids hear it at school or on the news, or just hear it from their father's mouth? Now, another reason I side with Barbara at this time is because the decision he made to have an affair with someone else, they didn't have any say in that. So his decision is affecting their lives, it's disrupting their lives without warning. Why should Rusty get a warning? Why should he get to pick and choose when to confront this issue? But again, no right or wrong answers, but I'm curious to how you all feel about this moment between the family. Now, I want to point this out in the scene. You'll notice that Jalen couldn't barely look at her father, but she's looking at her mom, kind of feeling bad for her, but you'll notice that Kyle is looking at his dad the whole time. Now, who the character's looking at might not mean anything, but I just thought it was interesting seeing their reactions before leaving the table, because remember my thoughts of episode 1 when I talked about Kyle. When he heard Carolyn's name when his dad went to her memorial, he was clearly upset, which again makes me think, did he know about the affair and didn't tell his mom? Now, we see Rusty overhears the conversation that Barbara's having with the kids, and we cut that between another flashback of what appeared to be Carolyn trying to break things off, but shortly after they hook up again. Now, my question is, was this their first breakup? Was this later in the relationship? Or maybe was this a breakup closer to when she died? Now again, I can't exactly pinpoint the importance of Rusty in the water, but we cut to this scene where we see him fighting Carolyn under the water. Now, was this real? Did this actually happen? Was this during the breakup? Was this during the week before she died? Or is this just a nightmare he's having? Is she seeping into his dreams and haunting him at what appears to be a place where he considers to be peaceful? Next morning, we see Rusty's awakened to Kyle throwing a baseball at the garage as we see the police arrive with a warrant to search their home. As the entire family watches them flip their house upside down, which also is a metaphor for their lives being switched upside down, they're taking their belongings, and I found it interesting that we see Jaden is the only one that speaks up about her laptop being taken, which makes me think, is there anything important on that laptop? But also, they find some rope in the drawer, which we know rope was used to tie up Carolyn. Now, to make things even more uncomfortable for the family, we see Rusty is given a mouth swab for DNA to identify if he is the father. Now, we see Rusty immediately goes to the office to confront Tommy as Tommy stands his ground with his newly appointed position and tells Rusty that he's now officially on leave. As Nico steps in and shares his 2 cents about the situation as he walks Rusty to the elevator. Now, you notice that everything around Rusty's life is falling apart, but the people he lied to are actually pushing back. From his work to his home, and now even his therapist comes out and calls him a liar as Barbara is present for their new session. Now, Rusty does admit that he did lie about some things, but he strongly believes that he's not a liar. Which to me, accountability doesn't seem to be his strongest suit, at least so far in this situation. Now, Rusty does share some honesty in this scene as he does tell his wife that he wants to make sure that this marriage can work out, but he also knows it's just a matter of time before he's officially arrested. Now, the truths don't stop there, as he also shares that what they'll find and what it will look like is that he was obsessed with Carolyn and basically stalking her. As he says that the breakup was not good, he knows that Tommy will definitely use this against him in court. Now, when he says that he was stalking her, was he taking photos of her? Was he following her to places that she wasn't aware that he was there? And also, did the person that texted him at the end of this episode, did they witness Rusty stalking her during that time? As Nico holds a press conference and reveals that they don't have a name for a suspect quite yet, as we see Raymond and his wife is watching this as Rusty arrives to speak to him. Rusty shares with Raymond all the things that's going to probably be said about him pretty soon, especially the week of Carolyn's murder. Now, Raymond tells Rusty that it's time for him to get a good lawyer, and that's exactly why Rusty's here, because he wants Raymond to represent him. He tells him that he needs someone to get into their heads because he's the best lawyer he knows. As Raymond tells Rusty that he doesn't really know who he is anymore and appears to decline his request. Looking for anyone to give him help at this point in the episode, we see Rusty finally gets a hold of Detective Rodriguez, who helps him get into another conversation with Reynolds about that second DNA found. Now, Rusty hopes to get information from Reynolds about the actual real killer that may or may not be out there, and if he helps him, he'll help him get some time off of his sentence. Now, as of right now, it appears that Reynolds sees right through the desperation of Rusty and he doesn't want to help, at least for now. I think he's going to come around at some point, but right now he declines to help him. But my question is, do you all think that Reynolds has a second accomplice, or do you think there might be some copycat killer out there? As Rusty desperately needs her help and needs her to look into this second potential killer out there, all while the eyes are on him, she agrees to help, but she tells him no more lies between them. Now that Rusty has at least one person on his side, we follow that up with Raymond talking to his wife about helping Rusty and wanting to reclaim his legacy and losing against Nico and Tommy. I really like how this scene showcased the underlying idea of some of these characters feeling like they don't have enough. I mean, look at Raymond's wife feeling the way that she does about Raymond not ready to be retired and having his happy life with them, and him not having enough. Or even taking Rusty, for example, and how he's treated his wife, him not having enough in that relationship and deciding to get into an affair with Carolyn, and looking at it as a way of escape or filling some type of void. And you can apply that same thing to his kids who feel like they're not enough in this family. Now, we end this episode with Rusty learning that he is the father, and literally seconds later, again, time is so key to this episode, time of inconveniences as the cops arrive to arrest him. As we watch Rusty getting booked in and his freedom and once peaceful life being taken away from him temporarily, as we see Nico talking to the press as he tells them,
"Nobody is above the law. Nobody."
As Rusty walks into the court to find Raymond there to defend him, and he also notices that his family is there as well. Now, Rusty's bond is set at $1.5 million, and Raymond wants an immediate trial, as where Nico wants to live up to that nickname that was given to him and delay things, but also wants to make a show out of this. But ultimately, the judge sees what Raymond has done and also what Rusty has done all these years, and she sides with Raymond, and they want to make sure that this is proper justice being done to Carolyn. As we see, Rusty's able to go home on bail and return home with his family. As we end with Rusty with his family and apologizes for what's happening, but also thanks them for being there for him at court. Now again, as I mentioned throughout this breakdown, inconvenience, the time not being on Rusty's side, as we see yet again him at home and somewhat getting a game plan in place, but also having a moment to breathe, all of a sudden his phone goes off and he gets a message from a 312 area code, which is local to Chicago, and the message reads, "You were there and I saw you." To me, this title perfectly sums up us seeing Rusty going against the people from all angles, his family, his friends, and his co-workers. This episode really did an excellent job of having Rusty's actions having consequences. Now, I didn't mention it in my last video, but I don't want to ignore, this show has some phenomenal performances from every single actor. I love seeing the different sides of these characters from before Carolyn was died, but also after. It is just so well done. Also really like how this episode handled the idea of a mentor and a mentee. Think about the idea of Reynolds having an accomplice and what that could mean for the character, but also fitting within the same theme of Raymond being a mentor to Rusty and Rusty being a mentor to Carolyn. So I like how they're playing with that relationship between all these different characters so far. Now, for my last breakdown, I shared with you all my main suspects, and I'm going to keep most of them on the board so far, but the only ones I want to remove for at least at this point is Tommy and Nico. Some burning questions I have after watching this episode. Will Carolyn's ex-husband have anything to say after learning the news about his ex-wife? But also, when it comes to the story about Rusty being the father of this unborn child who's unfortunately now taken away because of his mother's murder, how will this affect Rusty? How will Detective Rodriguez handle looking for this unknown second killer? But one of the biggest questions is, who texts Rusty at the end of the episode? Have we met this character yet? Could it be Carolyn's son, who I mentioned in my breakdown of episode 1? Also, what about the housekeeper who found her body? So many questions, and I can't wait to watch the next episode to find out what happens next. As I mentioned in my episode 1 breakdown, I will be covering this show every single week, so make sure you all stick around by subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell notification. But I would also love to hear your thoughts about this episode, but also episode 1. What major things did you all take away from the episode so far? What clues or theories do you all have? Let's talk about it all in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching this breakdown. You all stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.
Yeah.